Because it is my name. Wow. I mean, it's one of the most powerful lines ever written, right? Screamed by a man who's at his absolute breaking point. Even with zero context, you can just feel the weight of it, that desperation, the defiance. So today, we're going to unpack the terrifying kind of situation that leads to a moment just like this. We're going to explore how you defend yourself when your very name is all you have left. Let's get into it.
So, I want you to imagine a world where all the rules are completely flipped upside down. A world where you don't need evidence to be condemned, all it takes is an accusation. A single pointing finger is enough to completely ruin your life. This right here is the world of the witch hunt, and believe me, it's a recurring pattern in history where fear just unravels the entire fabric of justice.
You know, the engine that drives a witch hunt, it can really be summed up in one single word: hysteria. And this isn't just about people getting a little scared. No. Hysteria is a state of collective delusion. It's like a social fever where an entire community gets swept up in some irrational belief. And logic? Well, logic just goes right out the window.
And when you look at how this breakdown happens, you really see the poison of hysteria at work. First, fear completely overrides logic. It becomes the primary decision maker, not reason. Then, those community bonds just crumble. Neighbors turn on neighbors, shattering everything that holds a community together. The whole idea of burden of proof, gone. An accusation is treated as cold, hard fact. And in this terrifying environment, the smartest thing you can do is often the hardest. Just stay silent, because any word you say can and absolutely will be twisted against you.
And look, this isn't just some ancient history lesson. This pattern of paranoia, it repeats itself all the time. Of course, it happened in the 1690s with the Salem witch trials, but then it happened again in the 1950s during the Red Scare, which is what Arthur Miller was really writing about in The Crucible. And, it kind of forces us to ask a tough question. How does this kind of hysteria show up today? Maybe on social media or in our politics?
So let's say you're faced with an irrational mob. What can you possibly do? When evidence is totally meaningless, how do you even begin to defend yourself? Well, you turn to your most powerful weapon, language itself. We're going to build your rhetorical toolkit for persuasive defense.
The formal term for this is rhetoric, the ancient art of persuasion. Now, in a normal court of law, you'd rely on facts and evidence, right? But in the court of public hysteria, rhetoric becomes your #1 weapon. See, it's not about arguing the facts of the case, because the facts are being ignored. It's all about persuading people of your innocence. So the classic rhetorical triangle shows us exactly how this works. You've got 3 main tools at your disposal. First up is ethos. This is your appeal to character and authority. The goal here is pretty simple. Trust me, I am a good person. Second is pathos, the appeal to emotion. You want the audience to feel the profound injustice of what's happening. And third, you've got logos, the appeal to logic. But, and this is a huge twist, you're not using logic to disprove the accusation. You're using it to show just how absurd the accusation itself really is. And this brings us to the most crucial point of all. In a witch hunt, you have to shift the battlefield. You cannot win a fight over evidence that doesn't even exist. The only ground where you can actually win is the ground of your own character. Let that one sink in for a second. It's the central idea of this whole explainer. When the system is broken and a simple accusation is enough to condemn you, the only asset you have left is your reputation, the sum of who you have been your entire life. Your character becomes your only evidence.
Okay, so how do you actually build this defense? Well, it's a 3-step process using our toolkit. First, you establish your ethos. You remind people of who you are, your history of good deeds, your integrity, your place in the community. Second, you evoke pathos. You make them feel the human cost of this accusation, the pain, the shock. And finally, you use logos to reframe the whole situation. You point out the absurdity of the mob's logic, not your specific charge.
All right, so once you have your strategy, you face one last, absolutely critical decision. What voice are you going to use? The tone you choose can be the difference between winning over the crowd and sealing your own fate.
You basically have 2 main paths you can take here. On the one hand, you can choose righteous indignation. A passionate, forceful, even furious defense of your honor. This is definitely high risk, high reward. It can rally people to your cause, or it can just make you look defensive and guilty. The other path is calm logic, a detached, methodical breakdown of the whole situation. It's safer for sure, but it might lack the emotional fire you need to cut through all that hysterical noise.
Ultimately, all of this, it comes down to a single question. In a moment of crisis, when you're offered an easy way out that requires you to compromise who you are, what do you do? What is your name actually worth?
Let's look at a real-world test case for this. The Hollywood blacklist in the 1950s. The House Un-American Activities Committee accused all these screenwriters and actors of being communists. They were given a choice: save your career by informing on your friends and colleagues, what they called naming names, or refuse and get blacklisted. Lose your job, your reputation, everything.
So I'm going to ask you directly. Put yourself in that chair for a second. The committee is staring at you. Your family's future is on the line. Would you betray a friend to save your job? Yeah. There's no easy answer, is there?
And this brings us right back to where we started. John Proctor, he was offered a similar deal. All he had to do was sign his name to a confession, a lie, and he would live. He refused. He refused to let them use his good name to justify their hysteria and condemn other people. He chose to die to protect his integrity.
So, the final question isn't for some character in a play or a figure from history. It's for you. When everything is on the line and the only thing you have left is your character, what is your name worth to you?